Hi, everyone. Welcome to the chat. This is kind of very sensitive topic, but it has been a disturbing trend and worsened during the epidemic of the fact of the children being sexually exploited online. As parents, we need to learn how to deal with this and educate our children, because this is for some of us, it's quite new. So what do you ladies think?
I have a question as to what age you think the conversation should begin.
At a very young age.
Very young.
Well,
Yes.
Annabella is my daughter. She's 10 years old, and she came to me and she actually did point this out. So it's such an important topic that we're going through right now, because somebody had mentioned contacted her and they were asking her personal questions, and they were saying, "Can you send me some pictures of you?" And this is something that we have talked about in the past. Mm-hmm. And I didn't think this is something that was going to actually ever be an issue, but just putting it out there, then just telling her, it's not your fault. If somebody approaches you, just make sure you let me know. So she came to me and she said that somebody is out talking to me, asking me to put out pictures. And then I asked more questions, and she's like, "Oh yeah, he says he's a boy and he wants to get to know me." And I'm like, absolutely, do not do that. So it's so scary, but it's happening so much now. And she's 10 years old. Wow. Also, my other daughter is 17 years old. Now, 17, I have heard this from her in the past also, but she kind of is aware of what to do with the situation. But so many kids are not, and it's so sad and scary. And
we're not that.
Well, getting back to Gita, you were saying about since the pandemic. Well, when I saw the question, I did Google to see what was going on. Something, how bad is it? Well, they're saying 39% of luring attempts that have been reported in the last 2 years alone have been victims 13 and under.
Yes.
So they're going after the innocent, the ones that really don't know, as much as our older ones do. So I think the conversation has to be at a younger age. It can't be taboo anymore. It's got to be open, and your kids.
So what is younger? What's the age do you think?
I think it's really important at a very young age. But what I did with my kids too is not only just wait for them to come to you, but I created scenarios for them. Yes. Because as the young lady said, it could be, she thinks it's a 13-year-old boy like her. He thinks it's a 13-year-old girl, and we all know it's a 50-year-old man somewhere lurking and waiting. So what I did with my kids, I literally created a scenario. If this happened to you, what would you do? So that they're not, because they're just so, we're not pre-programmed to think everybody is bad. We're pre-programmed to think people are good. We are pre-programmed not to defend ourselves. That's why it's fight, flight, or freeze, and we tend to freeze. So when our children are approached in this manner, what I would strongly suggest as parents is not just to wait for them, or you create scenarios. I even create scenarios when I tell them their best friend might be the one to lure them. It's just not this dark person outside in the web, because we have seen in many different documentaries where the best friend or the friend who befriends them then inveiges them and lures them into scenarios that we know compromising for themselves.
Yeah, I like that you mentioned that, because I was taught that as a parent from other people, and probably from the schools too, to make scenarios, and that's what we would do. When you ask the age, from like 6 years old, we use actual words for our parts, actual words, so that they're not confused later if someone were to use them or whatever. But the online thing, and I went really old school. My kids don't have TVs in their rooms. One is 12, one is 10. There's no other devices other than in the room with me, like in the living room. So they're either on the big screen and I can see it all. And we as parents decided, like in a chat group, saying, okay, if we're going to let them play online, let's just let them add each other's kids, and that's it, but not allow them to have others. And you can put parental controls. It's still difficult. I will agree to that. and having those open discussions of, you don't know who that other kid is playing. They might sound like a girl that's 12 years old, but it's, like you said, a man, not actual person. So never give your name, never give your address, don't say what school you go to, and don't even say what town you live in. So they learned all that from a very young age. And again, old school, no phones. They don't have phones yet. And I understand some parents need it for being, you know, connected if they work from out of home or whatever, but we have other means for now that's working. And I know that when we do go to phones, it will just be phone numbers for their emergency contacts, parents, close family, neighbors, or something like that, but no data. I'm like,
you're very strict. You're very strict.
I am, but I know that there's so much wrong in this world that it's scary, right?
Yeah, Doris, let's go to Doris. Go ahead.
Yeah, several years ago, I was contacted by someone and I pretended I was my daughter, who at the time was 12. And I exchanged messages a couple of times because I wanted to report him to the police. Or I'm saying him, but you know, it could have been anybody. When I contacted the RCMP.
Sorry to interrupt, Doris, but the statistic shows it's mostly males.
Okay, so males. When I reported all the information to the RCMP and to the police, they couldn't do anything about it. So that part of it for me, if I wasn't doing what I'm doing now in the art world, I would love to be a private investigator to catch some of these people out and find out how we can do that, become a police officer, I don't know, undercover agent, I don't know, get some of these people, because it was horrible, the manipulation tactics that he used, and just how far he was going to go with the communication.
Wow.
Wow, that is really intense.
I was able to share with my daughter that story actually at the time. She goes, "Mom, you're not supposed to write back. You're not supposed to communicate." So I thought, isn't that great? So she got the message. But I shared with her.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
It's a bad.
Now, what about yourself?
Well, I have to agree with Yerika to some extent that I started with my girls talking about them from the moment they started knowing parts of their body. The kids were brought up in Germany, and so there's a slightly different attitude towards sex and the body. Yeah. It's a lot more free than in here, in America and in Canada, I think. And for me, there were never any fun words for the body parts. It was like, and also I was very cognizant of the fact that being females, there's always this inclination for society to kind of sexualize you quicker. So I'm kind of like, I've been a tomboy my whole life, and it's like, you know, when the sex issue of any form hit my head, I was always paranoid. So also through, you know, past childhood and traumas and experiences, I wanted my kids to be informed. And I had a lot of pushback from a lot of my immediate girlfriends, because they're resentful of the fact that my kids knew their body parts. They did not have any cute words for it. They were straight up, if, you know, Mum, I need to do this, any changes in the body, we were talking about it openly, freely. And so when they got to kindergarten, my kids are pretty frank. And I was thankful for that. And I kind of continued that discussion throughout. A point I'd like to note is that, you know, the COVID has brought out a lot of issues, not just with, you know, pedophiles, whatever, but also, you know, abuse in the home and violence. It's just become more concentrated because we are like stuck at home. Even when we are at home, we're working on our computers. The kids are allocated schoolwork on their computers. It's sometimes you don't have the choice to keep them away from the computers. But one thing that we do have control of is discussion, creating an environment where we have open dialogue and your kids are not afraid to talk to you. And I know that from my childhood, coming from very conservative parents who did not discuss sex, did not discuss, you know, if you got issues with your body, I knew the minimum and get on with it, you know. And my mom considers herself to be relatively liberal compared to her family. And I realized, oh my God, but yeah, she is compared to them. So there are a lot of issues which kind of continue to encourage you to be quiet. But I find that it's awkward. It's not natural, you know, you are kind of going against your nature, but just keep talking. And once you start talking and talking appropriate to their age, So, for example, you do not sit down with a 5-year-old and start explaining the details of the birds and the bees, but you can discuss the birds and the bees generically. And also, the first thing I remember, even for the kids, some of the kids that I'm teaching, I was teaching the elementary school, they know about the body being in the box. They know that no one's allowed to touch them or refer to them or talk to them when their bodies are in this kind of like invisible box they describe. And it's usually from your chest down to your groin, which it covers. And they taught that in some schools. And I know my kids were taught that in their school, but it's not a given that is going to be an external information that they're going to get. So it's on us as family members. And it doesn't have to be your kids, it can be your nieces, your nephews, it's on us individually to take that job on and just talk according to their comfort as well. Because if it's your niece and nephews, if they haven't had the discussion with their parents, they're going to be like, okay, auntie, really? I've had that with my nephew one time.
Fitnat, did you have like a whole pot of coffee before you came on tonight? Oh, that's amazing conversation.
This is straight up water.
that's like, you're very passionate about, like, obviously we've heard a lot of communication in the home. That's very important. Becca, what about boys in the home? Genevieve, you have 2 boys. I want to say, is this, Gita, in your research, did you find that girls are more susceptible to this than boys? Because it can happen to both. What did they say?
Attacked both.
They're attacked both. Okay.
No, sorry. Actually, the boys are more vulnerable than girls.
Really?
I think because it's less likely to be talked about, thinking that girls are going to be exploited.
Yes.
So, in our home, like my boys are almost 5 and 8, and for us, same. We use the real names for body parts. When your 1.5-year-old is yelling penis across the mall, it's like, well, he knows what it's called. But for us, it, like Laura, you mentioned a couple of times, like age-wise, I think as long as they have any access to the internet, whether or not it's supervised or not, I think families should consider discussing what can be out there on the internet at an age-appropriate level. That not everyone is nice, and even though they look or seem nice, that we don't really know them. We don't always know who they are, and we have to be careful. And there are, as parents, depending on your own comfort level with technology, you have to get comfortable. You have to learn what's out there. When TikTok came out, lots of kids want to go on. Now lots of kids want to be on there, and it's really dangerous. We, in my family so far, my oldest is 8. All communications, everything, it's, approved messaging. It's only with friends. The games that he plays, we won't let him play the games that allow strangers to join in. It has to be ones where it's within closed servers and things like that. Now, my husband works in technology, so that does help. We understand some of that information, but there's lots of sources. The school district has been a great resource in learning some of that information, because they realize how important it is to protect kids.
Thank you, Genevieve.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Becca. Like, for all parents, that the school districts do have classes for both parents and kids at different age groups, and they teach them about online protection, and it's amazing what they have. So
wow, my daughter just started teaching this year, and she happens to be teaching 6 and 7-year-olds, hence the questions about the age thing, because she's bringing some issues up to me and I wasn't sure how to handle it. And so it's interesting hearing from everybody how to handle that age category, because she's a first-year teacher for 6 and 7-year-olds in Arizona, and so I wanted to be able to guide her a little bit. Thank you guys for your input.
That's cool. Good for her. Like, before COVID started and like homeschooling started and like spending lots of time on electronics, it was not even a question. It wasn't an issue. Now it's an issue.
So much.
We like to, I'm just going to jump to Genevieve. We want to give some people that haven't spoken a chance. Thank you so much, you guys that have spoken. Genevieve, you, and then Judith.
All right. Well, I think we all agree here that it's all a concern that kids are being more exploited online, which is scary, I think, for everyone. I think what I want to bring here is how we're going to actually, as a parent, take care of this, right? I know we can do parental control and all that stuff, but if we go back to actually like the bond we have with our children, the attachment we have with our children, and I want my child to feel comfortable and attached to me to come and talk to me if there's a problem, because we don't know when that problem is going to show up. It can show up when they're quite young, but it can show up when they're 35 years old, right? So this is not only I feel that can happen at any age. So with my little ones, I'm really working really hard at actually validating their feelings, listening to them, not making them wrong for crying, because my kids are really little, but I know this is a thing that I'm creating for a lifetime. And I believe this is actually, there's stats on this, that if you have a strong bond, a strong attachment with your children, there's also like 50% less chance they will be addicted, because they're going to come to substances or other things, they're going to come to you, and they're going to come to the person they're attached to take the right decision. So I feel here that is something that needs to be actually talked about also.
Yeah, parental attachment. Yeah.
I completely agree. It's really good points that you are sharing. But in my experience, having two boys, I don't think when they were in elementary school, it was part of the pack. We invite an expert, and the school district was really open to have an expert to teach us how to prevent some of that risk at home. And as Becca mentioned, it's important that we have that technology that allows us as parents how to prevent that to happen. And if we are not an expert, to get the information. Something that also really helps, and I was noticing that it's important we have this space for us to comment on it, so they are aware that we are here for our children. And as a two boys, I was really alert when they were playing games, because in games, everybody can jump in and you don't know really who they are, and they can get private questions. So one of the first rules is never answer private questions when you're in a game. Video games that mostly for children are really easy to engage. And also, to be aware of who is he's providing that facilitation or get closer to you in that moment. Something that helped my children is like, in my culture, it's really common that you go and kiss when you meet everybody. But I ask them, you need to be polite, but if something is uncomfortable, you don't need to go and kiss everybody. Because it's part of our culture. I am from Mexico, maybe Italian do the same, some French do double kiss, and it's part of to be educated, but they need to understand this a line and a boundary, and that comes from us. Something that I also read and was in the time my children were at school is that UNICEF have a beautiful program, and they create an official day for prevent bully or abuse online, and it's in February 8th. And they had this beautiful project called Special and Private. And how I teach my children that nobody can like touch them, I say everything that your bathing suit is covered, that is really special and it's you. That is how I approach the topic to them. Since they were like 3 or 5, they were learning how to swim. I say that is just private and special, and it's for you. So that was my experience, but I really feel the pain for so many parents because now is different times,
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Kimmy, what about you?
Yeah, well, of course, I agree with what everyone's saying as a parent myself, and I've got my daughter, I've got 2 mostly grown sons and 2 young boys as well that are in our care. And it's obviously it's an issue, it's a worry. But one thing that comes to mind is that there's all this focus on educating our children to not be susceptible to this. And I totally agree with that. But I think that there also has to be an awareness of educating our children to not become the abusers. Because even just listening to my daughter talking about what the kids at school say sometimes, and I think, well, these kids, they get it somewhere. Where are they getting it? That they're spouting this type of language or this action,
And everyone is, I think, focused so much on making sure that their children are not victims that I think sometimes parents are not focusing enough on making sure that their children are not the aggressors. And that, so that's
Good point.
Very good point.
Good point.
Yeah, that's very good. I like when we look at it from the other perspective as well. Chiara, then Ashni.
Well,
Yeah. Okay.
you guys, Italians, Europeans, anyone, like, you don't talk about your body parts. Everything's private. You don't say it. They've kind of ignored it. And we gave the cutesy little names to, especially to the little boys. So when the kids started preschool, they had someone come in and do the proper talk and the proper showing them with dolls, proper names. They said that deters pedophiles from approaching young children. Well, the kids came home and of course they said the proper words all through the house. And the older generation was like appalled. They were like shocked. They're like, oh my gosh, what are you doing? I said, we've got to change and upgrade with the times. So that was done like 24, 22 years ago. Fast forward to my youngest, who's 10-year gap. And it's a totally different generation because he's all about the technology. And yes, he went through the same training and the same education. And he's a gamer. Like, I don't know about you guys, but nowadays I feel like if you're not a gamer, they're not in with anything. So I was in the room with my son, like, who's on with you? So I'm in there introducing myself to all of his friends. So I make sure I know who he's interacting with so that if something were to happen, I can, intervene. But that being said, yeah, when my daughter, she's going to kill me, but when my daughter was in elementary school, she was being bullied. And then she kind of became not the bully, but I could see that she was changing. She was doing it back. And I had to pull her aside and said, hey, you didn't like it when it was being done to you or your friends. So why are you doing it? Mommy, I'm not doing it. And I said, yeah, you are. Listen to what you're doing. And that was kind of an aha moment for all of us because everyone's going, why are you picking on your daughter? No, I'm not picking on her, but she needs to be made aware of her actions and how she's relating. So Kimmy, you're right. We can't just look at just the one side. And I've always kept an open communication. So my kids know they can come with me and talk to me about anything. So when my youngest did come to me about being bullied, I was able to deal with it with the school. So the school is an awesome resource because they are trained to deal with the kids for any kind of bullying situation. And there's ways of escalating it if you're not being happy. So I think you got to look at it's a full circle thing. It's not just the bully and it's not just
the
child.
The school is trained for bullying. What about sex exploitation? Are they trained for that?
I don't know about that one.
No.
I know, like I said, we did the preschool. They were educated on that.
It's a criminal thing. They'll bring in a police officer.
Yeah.
And then if you want to talk to them, it goes through so many different channels and levels. Absolutely.
Yeah. And those pedophiles, they usually use nicknames. So there's no way of ever catching them.
And it's hard to prove, like, I don't know if we all know about the Amanda Todd story. So she was one of the ones that was, online and all that stuff. So I think we've come a long way in trying to get recognition and a notoriety on it, but I think we have a long ways to go still, especially with the way technology is and everything is online.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's important to
So I just wanted to go to Ashni. We're at over 20 minutes and then Val hasn't spoken. So if we could just hold that thought, that would be excellent. Go ahead, Ashni.
Yes, when I was in Hong Kong, one of my neighbor, she had a daughter, like her daughter was 14 years old. Somebody used to contact her and then immediately then they came to know that it was the driver of her own car, and he used to molest her when he used to take her to school and all. And this girl, she took and she and that girl died, and like from that day I'm very careful with my daughter, because my daughter went through hell after that girl, like she died,
Did she commit suicide?
Yes, she did. And they used to go to school together and everything together. So like, me and my husband and my we told her everything what to do, and now my daughter has become so strong that she doesn't get scared of anybody. Like we taught her everything, like those 2 months were very difficult for my daughter.
Mhm. Yeah, of course, of course.
So sad.
Had
Yeah. Val?
Unmute yourself, Belle.
I'm just grateful my kids are grown up right now, but I do have nephew and nieces, and of course, one day there'll be grandkids too. So this is like a lot of information to take in. But I'm going to go back to what Genevieve said, and I truly believe that having dinner at the dinner table with your children, with full open conversations and not judging, not discriminating, just talking about everything as openly as you can, making them feel that they can come to you no matter what, being there for them 110% and listening and being part of their lives. I think that is so important. The kids, they totally were interacting with other sources, maybe not online. Like, my daughter, when she was catching the bus, she got asked if she wanted to take drugs and other things. So there were other things going on, but I think having that foundation at home, that strong bond, is very important. But then again, that can break. What happens when something happens in your child, like Ashley's daughter, trying to rein that back in, and that's difficult. Or if the kid loses their security of comfort, I'm like, whew, some heavy stuff. I don't, so much to think about, and definitely a lot to take in.
Yeah, I think that making sure that you believe.
Neighbor, and that girl was my opposite neighbor. That was the worst part.
Yeah.
I think if anything gets brought up if anything does get brought up, making sure that they're believed, because I think that could be such a big issue. I know for me, I was 10, it wasn't online. I'm 51, nothing happened, but it was my bicycle broke and something happened in the parking lot. And my parents, thank God, believed me, and he ended up in jail for many years for what he did in a parking lot, just random. So yeah, being believed is really important.
I think we just need to keep up to speed on what kids are, what these acronyms mean. Back in the day when my kids were small, PIR was always the little, they would be on their little, whatever it was back then, MSN, Messenger, and all these things. And PIR, parent in room, is what that means, And so when you saw that, like, I didn't let my kids know that I knew what that meant. So I would always be in the room, PIR 24/7. It's different. There wasn't a lot of gaming back then. There was Atari and the Pac-Man and all of these kinds of lame-o 80s, 90s. I'm so glad that I don't have small children right now either, to be honest. But it's all about communicating and really just talking to your children. I mean, my conversations with my kids were about drugs. They were about suicide. They were about, these are your privates, and these are their real names, and no one has the right to touch those, right? So they were about those things, but like, I never thought in a million years that my children would ever get touched. I also didn't think that my son was going to get bullied in elementary school, and he did, so it's just really being aware. And sometimes when you're so aware, like, you still might not be aware. You don't know if your son's going out and doing drugs at that house, or someone's touching him inappropriately when he doesn't want to.
That's right.
And someone said flight. What did you say, Eureka? Flight, fight, or freeze. This happened. It happened to me.
And this is what. Yeah, Kathy, that's what I'm saying. Never, I have a 23, never, ever, please, you'll never think not my child, or not me, or not my area, or I live in an affluent area. I have a 23-year-old. He was bullied too. He was racially profiled. is we think it's the internet out there. I'm telling you, the first sexual exploitation or molestation or touching will be not, by statistics, it's by somebody that is known to the family and to
Yes,
the child.
exactly,
Right?
exactly.
Right? So the open communication, speaking about sex openly, connecting with your child and letting them feel safe that no matter what happens, I even told them, if you get somebody pregnant, if you got a disease, you can come to me and we will deal with it. Right? Not being judgmental, because I come from a Caribbean, judgmental, Indian, Muslim, give me that background. And all our cultures have that. So you really, my biggest advice, never ever say not my child.
Of course.
Not my, because
Agreed.
where I live, you always thought not your child. Everybody's child was doing it. Everybody's child.
Until it's your child.
Something,
And I'm talking about the
also-
sexual parties. And I'm talking about the 15, 14-year-old boys in sex parties and all these things you think it's out in the internet. It's happening right in our doors. As Kathy says, parent in room, they are much smarter than you think they are. They are much more, they are much more manipulative and conniving. You think you're smart, well, they can outsmart you 10 times over.
Exactly.
Just remember that.
Something
Having
really
a
important.
13-year-old makes me think of things quite differently now. Now I need to backtrack and say, is it going on? Can it go on? So thank you, Eureka, for opening my eyes to that.
My
Yeah,
internet
you go
goes
into their
off for my
rooms, you
daughter
check
at
their
11 in the
backpacks,
night.
you check under their beds. You gotta be. You want to be a private. Who wanted to be the private investigator? This is your opportunity.
Something really important that I wanted to realize is that we need this space and us to be advocates for the people that already suffer this, and not to be quiet for them. Like when somebody in the school or in the neighborhood or somebody mentioned, we need to be supporting them in this moment of tragedy, not to judging them. We need to be that part that they feel comfort in us and that we are supporting them. And we had, I remember, really close, an event in Port Moody School, and I met with the mother and I support and I was advocacy and I had an interview with her, and I am completely out there. We need to have this space for them, for the victims.
Or even as parents, I think I live in Port Moody up in Heritage Mountain here. And I think as women, this is a wonderful way as women connecting, supporting, because it is not easy to grow a child in the world we live in now, financially, emotionally, spiritually. We don't have a sense of community as some of our cultures had, with the mom, the auntie, the uncle, the grandpa. That child had to answer to 15 different people, whereas here people don't want to get involved. They see things, but they don't want to get involved. I'll give you a story. I was driving down Heritage.
Okay, Eureka, I want to hear your story, but we're running out of time. Real quick before we go to Genevieve. Go ahead. Okay, so two little boys were fighting each other going down the street. What I did, I turned my car around and went right up next to them and said, "Hey, what's going on?" I mean, they were dropping the backpack, punching each other, and they're walking to school together, and they look like 9 and 8-year-olds. I drove my car and I said, "What's going on here? Are you guys friends?" And they looked at me like, "Oh my God." I said, "Well, if you're friends, that's not how you treat your friends. Don't let me see that again." And this is what I'm saying. As a community, you get involved. Yes, people don't want to get involved, but this, as parents, everybody's child is our child. And if we feel that way, and even if our kids feel that way, that people are watching, people are there, that lady there might just have, I think that sense of community is really important that we've lost. Anyway, I'm done.
Awesome. Well, thank you, ladies. That was an awesome conversation. Now, for everyone out there that are listening to us, right, we want to know, what are you thinking about kids being sexually exploited online? If you agree, disagree, let us know what you think. If this conversation will resonate to someone that please share this conversation to someone, to that special person, because we're all about helping and supporting each other. So thank you so much. Follow us. Bye.